All right. And feel free to continue breathing that breath, uh, especially if you start to feel a little, jangly or restless. We're talking about restlessness too in today's talk. So continue to breathe that way if you like. Um, this is a poem hot off the loose leaf today, and it's called What Draws Us. And it hopefully will bring us to a focus to where we can get to. Um, Really, I thought about today's session mostly for the person or two. I had one person write me from the group who just said, what are all these numbers you're talking about? They had no idea. So even if it's just for that, I told that one person that I would do something on this to give a little intro. It's not really an intro to the Enneagram, but we'll show you how to start decoding this. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool, and I'll give you some just a few leads at the very end before we go into meditation. So this is called What Draws Us. Everyone knows the tadpole is drawn to become a frog, as the chrysalis is drawn to become a butterfly, just as the acorn is drawn to become an oak tree. Adolescents, however, are drawn to become whole human beings. And this drawing is the source of all human restlessness. The Buddha was restless and left the palace. Jesus was restless and left Nazareth. Rich kid or poor kid, doesn't seem to matter. We are all drawn to leave the drivenness of our culture, if we are lucky, and if we can hear the Spirit drawing us to something bigger. The hero's journey always leads away from home, into the wilderness, and into facing our own inner demons. Buddha met his in the forest. Jesus met his in the desert. Have you met yours? If not, oh, restless zombie, drop your hoe or spreadsheet and let this poem be a sip of salt water. Oh, restless zombies, drop your hoe or spreadsheet and let this poem be a sip of salt water. Yeah, I've experienced in Haiti where this whole zombie lore comes from, and the zombies are real in Haiti. And it just as they're metaphorical, in our art now, how many Night of the Living Dead zombie movies and series do we have? We're trying to wake up to this fact that you can be sort of looking like you're alive, but really be sort of dead. And in Haiti, there are real zombies still. And if you tune in there, if you pick up the Monday morning music, you'll have this poem there. But also you have a picture of a real zombie. And I know that's true because I was there when the Belgian photographer climbed over a fence to get a picture of the guy. And I'll explain a little bit more about zombies. But generally, we can be a zombie. Like I said, oh, restless zombie, drop your hoe or spreadsheet. This guy was hoeing all night, in the night. It was almost midnight and he was out in the field hoeing away because that's what zombies do. I'll explain a little bit more about it. But the metaphorical idea is this, it's the same. We can just be driven by the culture and just sort of hypnotized. Zombies are put into a drug-induced, real zombies are put into a kind of drug-induced kind of state, but they can wake up. And so can we. And the Enneagram is a great tool of awakening, which is why we use it. The 30 people I'm walking with long term, I introduced them all to the Enneagram if they didn't know it. And we go back and forth. Some of them are going into deeper study of it now with one of my friends, colleagues. So you can always drop me a line if you want to know more about it, but I'll give you an ability to start. But let's go into the desert for a minute, because this is Lent. And even though Jesus had this great breakthrough, he left home because he was restless. He found something in the Jordan, if you remember last week. The sky opened up. He had a kind of mystical experience. The sky opened up, and a dove came down and said, "Hey, you're my son, and I love you." And it was what Jesus was looking for, but he wasn't yet ready to go on the journey. The search was over, but the journey had not begun yet. And before you go from the search to the journey, you have to go into the wilderness. He went into the desert of Palestine, as if he was already in the desert, because he was hanging, was there with John the Baptist, who was like miles away from the center of what Jews thought was the spiritual place where everything happened. He was already out on the edges of things. And the Spirit, it said, if you read Mark, it said the Spirit drove him out further into the wilderness, into the desert, where he lived with the angels and the beasts, the light in the dark. And that is the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talks about. You leave home and you go into the wilderness, some form of wilderness. The beginning of the Divine Comedy by Dante in 1300s, he says, in the middle of the road of life, I found myself in a dark wood, the true way completely lost. Okay, so let's listen a little bit to what Jesus faced, which will be a preview of this, but also will draw us into the Enneagram. Even though Jesus probably didn't know the method, learned it like I have, spent 40 years studying it, but Jesus was meeting the essence of the Enneagram in the desert. So he's in the desert for 40 days, which means biblically, a hell of a long time, really as long as it takes. It's like 40 days, 40 years. It's a whole lifetime. You might spend a whole lifetime there. But he finally, he's there and he's open. And so the devil comes to tempt him and says, hey, you got to be really hungry out here. He said, and this is from the Gospel of Matthew, who fills us in on these key details. Mark doesn't tell us, but Matthew gives us this great insight. So the devil tempts him and says, hey, you've got to be hungry. You're out here in the desert doing this hero thing. He says, why don't you take this stone and turn it into a loaf of bread? Then you'd have something to eat. Well, Jesus doesn't go for that temptation. And he says, well, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. So he's sort of like, he's up to it. He's up to that temptation. He doesn't go for it. Well, so the devil tries again. He says, wow, you really are something. And so somehow takes him up to the top of the temple in Jerusalem. So they teleport up there. And now he's in the center of the Jewish culture and power and everything. And he says, you are something. He said, I bet you could throw yourself down off this height and angels would catch you. And then everybody would know you're so great. And, you'd be on the cover of Time magazine or something. And Jesus says, no, he doesn't go for that. He doesn't go for that, which really, when you understand the Enneagram, would have probably been Jesus's toughest temptation, but he didn't go for it. Well, devil's got one more try in him, so he takes him even higher. He goes to the mountain that looks down on Jerusalem, the peak of the mountain, and he said, look, all right, but I'll tell you, if you would sort of give over to me, you can control all this. You can have ultimate power. It's like if you Lord of the Ring guys, he's offering him the one ring here, He says, you can control this all. And I've got an icon in the Merton room that, there's the image of Jesus pointing his finger like this and saying, no. He said, I obey a power higher than you. So those three temptations. Now, what could they tell us? Well, they're exactly the three temptations we all faced. We've always faced since the first humans were here. And if you can actually see, these are the three points that can actually sort of stop your spiritual journey in its tracks. You can get snared by any of them. Jesus had to face those. Buddha, it's very interesting. Buddha faces temptations too, but there's 5 of them, but it's really the same 3. The Buddhists just always tease things out a little bit more. So, well, we're losing something here. Are we still here? Let's see. We're getting over there. Let me see if I can go to the screen share now, because I want to go to the model of the Enneagram to show you these 3 temptations, if I can. Let's see. Yeah, I'll go back to the. Yeah. Now, Ennea means 9 and gram means points. And this image, this symbol, this pathway really has at least 1,100 years old that we know of for sure. And I think it's much older than that. But this thing is scratched into a temple in Rishikesh, India, about the time that the Muslims invaded India, the Mughals invaded India. So we know it's at least 1,100 years old. They carbon dated it. And it somehow comes out of the Middle East. Pretty much most people are convinced it's the Sufis doing, but also there's good information that this particular compass for making this journey of the hero into the wilderness to meet the demons and then to really go home. The hero always goes home with the hero, sometimes they slay a dragon and then get the gold or something, but really they go home with the richness of the journey, you see. And they go home a rich person. And then they can go back to the village. Sometimes. Jesus tried. They tried to throw him off the cliff. So sometimes it doesn't work going home. But anyway, so now this is 9. This is, if you look at the inner triangle there, the inner triangle, you can see that it connects the 6 and the 3 and the 9. Those are 3 like neighborhoods in the journey. Now the first temptation takes place at the 6 point. So all the 5, 6s, and 7, those people with these particular temperaments, and you'll be able to find out more about this. I'll give you a source. But the people with this kind of temperament, they tend to be, the stopper is security, survival and security, but really security, the security of having a meal, the bread. And so they can sort of stop your passage. You can sell out. I've sold out my spiritual journey for security more than once. Okay, so even if you aren't in this particular part of the Enneagram, your temperament isn't a 5, 6, or 7 temperament. It's easy to sell out for that, but it probably wouldn't be your top one. The second time when he takes him up to Jesus up to the top of the temple, then it's the 2, 3, and 4 temptation, the strong temptation for the 2, 3s, and 4s, and that's to sell out for esteem, for people's esteem. And Jesus, I could make a pretty good argument that he was a 4 on the Enneagram once you learn about 4s, and that probably would have been really hard to pass up, but he did. And then if you go to the top of the Enneagram, what's known as the top of the Enneagram, the 8, 9s, and 1s, that's the last temptation. And notice how perfect it is, because you're like at the top of the mountain there. If you look at that triangle, and he says, hey, all right, you didn't go for security, you didn't go for esteem, but how about power and control? Can you resist that? And that's what the people at the top of the Enneagram can really fall for, power, control. It's control, stupid, as one of my good friends once wrote on her on her bathroom mirror in red lipstick after she had the millionth argument with her husband. It's control, stupid. She just wanted control, you see. Now, like I said, or at least I'll admit, I've sold out to all these things, and it stopped my journey dead in the tracks. Either, I wanted more security, so I stopped the journey, or I wanted everybody's affection and esteem, or power and control. Now my first, because I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, but I lean right into the 2. So my one energy will. I mean, I could blow by security concerns, and I can even blow by sort of people's, whether people like me or not. But I'm sort of an addict for control freak. Now we all are addicted to all three, so we're all cross addicted. But the question, how do they stack for you? And I can let I can let a lot of things go, but when somebody tries to control me, bing, it's like just something just a little bell goes off, and boy, you have to really be onto it. Now somebody else, if you're 5, 6, or 7, security is on the top. It's like a 3-layer cake, in terms of your 3 addictions and which ones will really, maybe you can put up with people not liking you, or maybe you can put up with being out of control, but when your security is, so it's very interesting like that. But those really, and then they break down and it gets very fine tuned to show all the ways that you can get, in other words, you can find out the ways you can get your heart blocked. You notice in the middle of the Enneagram, there's nothing, but there is that little light there. It's a nice image. And that is the heart. They talk about 2, 3s, and 4s as being heart types, but they're talking there really about emotional types. The heart, I'm talking about the Sacred Heart or the bodhicitta. These are all ways into it, you see, but they're all also ways that can block it. So this is really interesting. It's really helpful if you're on this journey. So I'm going to show you something else now. Let me see if this works. Try to switch my, did that work? Let me see. Do you see the book?
Yes.
Yeah. Now this would be the one book. If you only had one book to start you on your journey, this would be my choice. I have about 40 books on the Enneagram, and I got something from all of them, really, even the crummy ones. But this is the one, if you wanted to spend in less than 20 bucks, you can get this book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, by 2 really great guys, Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson. Don passed away a few years ago, but Russ is still out there working it. But this is, of their many books and of the many books I have, probably where I would start anybody. And we don't really have time to get into it now, but just so you have some lead. And I may have a therapist in the audience, and I know I have people in the audience who have been to therapists, myself included. And you know what it costs to sit down with a therapist for an hour. Well, you can get this book for less than 20 bucks, and you can, and believe me, it's going to save you money in the long run. Because we all, at some point, probably most of us do end up in a therapist's office. And, we did 6 months. The first time my marriage broke down, and Pam and I did 6 months. And I doubt if it would have worked if I hadn't have discovered this is 1980. And if I hadn't discovered the Enneagram first, it sort of opened me up, and I realized I had some work to do, and I wasn't able to do it. So we did 6 months of therapy. So therapy is really good work, but it's sort of expensive. So if you could fork out 20 bucks, believe me, it's the best investment you could make. This is, among other things, just one of the 2 best books that I have, and certainly the best book to start with, and maybe the only book you'd ever need. So that's sort of the pitch. And if you have questions about it, you'll feel free. You have my email me, and I'd be glad to consult or whatever. And if you're really interested in picking up some steam on it, just let me know, and I'll send you the email of it's Linda Rands, a woman I've worked with for a while, who's gone pretty far with the Enneagram, and she's running a kind of twice a month session on this coming up. And it's really great to do to learn the Enneagram with a bunch of other people. I'll guarantee you we have all the shades of people in a group of 50 people. We have everybody. I used to have all of them in a class of 25. You'd have just all the temperaments. It really helps if you're it really helps. So just file that away for future need. Let me get out of here. And now we'll just go into meditation with this. And so if you can shift over a little bit and get yourself in a meditation pose body-wise, sometimes people, leave the screen and go sit down on the floor or whatever. But if you can just sort of let the eyes shut, and if you do that kind of meditation, or just lower them a little bit if you're a Buddhist, and then we'll just sort of I'll lead you in a little bit, just give you a little push to it.